While some convicts may be mentally unwell, some are pure egomaniacs. Like Bryce Rhodes, who had the capacity to make everyone in court mad enough to wish for the death sentence. Rhodes stood in court for the murder of 3 men. It all started in Louisville, Kentucky, when Rhodes shot Christopher Jones, whom he mistook for a man with a bounty on his head. The only 2 witnesses to the crime were Larry Ordway and Maurice Gordon, whose bodies conveniently showed up a month later. So, it's not hard to guess who the killer was, especially with them being spotted with a man coincidentally looking just like Rhodes prior to their death. Rhodes' crimes were abysmal, and his actions in court were equally as frustrating, if not more heartless. In the 7 years of proceedings, Rhodes managed to infuriate every single court attendee, from witnesses to judges.
Ma'am.
Stop it. Look at me.
Ma'am.
He keeps turning.
Ma'am, I told you once before. Let me please help you understand.
In one hearing, Rhodes blew a kiss to the victim's family and kept making arrogant gestures, while talking back to the judge like a kid defying his teacher, and the judge was also in the wrong for not taking severe action.
Mr. Rhodes, you're smiling. I don't know why you're smiling.
Because I can.
Well?
Because I can. It's not a crime to smile.
It's not a crime to
Continue
smile.
what you were saying.
Now you'd think Rhodes would behave better with this attorneys, you know. The people literally trying to save his life, but there's no understanding someone like Rhodes. He kept sacking attorneys, and it got to the extent of him spitting on an attorney, which forced him to wear a spit mask for the next hearing.
Why y'all have me come out like this for?
I think you know why.
What?
You know exactly why. Now, listen, stop talking. Have been...
God.
Are you done?
No, I ain't done.
With a humiliating spit mask and everyone against him, Rhodes still didn't learn his lesson and acted up in court again, insulting the judge and threatening to show up to their house.
I'm going to keep talking because I don't want to have to see you back here for this.
What you think where you live at? What you think at? None of that. I ain't do.
After 7 years, the case is still open, and a jury trial is set for December 2023. The death penalty has been talked about, but nothing is certain for now. We'll bet most people are hoping for the death penalty. Speaking of deserving death, one can definitely join that list. Leon Davis, whose actions sparked an utter brawl inside the courtroom.
You know you did it. You know you did it.
Davis was on trial for a crime he committed in 2007 in Polk County, Florida. One Leon Davis walked into a gas station, not for chips or cigarettes, but for cold-blooded murder, when he shot Pravin Kumar and Dashrath Patel in extreme close proximity. While Davis managed to escape that one instance, he couldn't avoid the past when he entered the Headley Nationwide Insurance Office in Lake Wales and suddenly tied Yvonne Bustamante and Juanita Luciano and brutally set them on fire to burn them alive. Obviously, the two couldn't handle the torture and they passed away. All things quickly came down to a witness claiming that a victim told him Davis was the killer.
Do you know who did this to you?
What is her reaction?
She raised up on the stretcher and emphatically stated, Leon Davis, without any doubt in her mind.
But there was only one issue. That victim had passed away, and the court couldn't punish Davis over the statements of a late witness.
Well, what you said is such fundamental error that I had to declare a mistrial.
All of this led to the wild scene of the courtroom when Davis turned himself in after becoming the most wanted man in Florida. Once the complication regarding the late witness occurred, Yvonne Bustamante's father rushed at Davis and a fight almost broke out with Yvonne's parents.
You know you did it. You know you did it.
You may be seated.
You know you did it. You know you did it.
Her mum also yelled and threw her purse at Davis. After a million delays and complications, the death penalty was ultimately in the cards for Leon Davis, who spent almost 12 years on death row. Some people are a walking nightmare, like Alison Weaver, who stood in court for literally eating another human being. This horror story started in Oakland County, Michigan, when a woman let Alison Weaver in for drinks, only to wake up the next day being bitten, strangled, raped, and parts of her eaten alive.
I let Alison Thompson Weaver in my home, and in return she tried to kill me. If the police hadn't shown up when they did, from neighbors calling 911, I wouldn't be here today.
She described the sight of her waking up saying, "First, of waking up in my own bed to find her in some animal-like crawling position, naked, ready to pounce on me, her strangling me, the expression on her face, until I was unconscious."
As I regained consciousness and could not move from being raped, beaten and literally eaten alive from head to toe.
The police received a call for fighting, and when they showed up, they were shocked to find the two women in a bathtub, with Weaver under the influence of alcohol and the woman laying next to her with bite marks, strangle marks, and parts of her ear bitten off. In court, Weaver was wearing a normal mask, when in reality, she would have been wearing a Hannibal Lecter protection mask, because she's just as, if not more dangerous, than the horror movie villain. She stood quiet as tensions were high in the courtroom, and the victim's statements were utterly heart-wrenching. The victim described everything in extremely traumatic detail. Afterwards, she talked about how the experience will haunt her forever, as she broke out into tears.
I'm learning to live with the pain and countless scars, as well as the countless stares I receive. But what is scaring me is the non-stop visions of her demon eyes killing me, and the fact that she will try to do this again someday.
Weaver was charged with rape and attempted murder, and the judge described the horror show, saying,
"But I've been up here for 25 years, and I've seen murder cases that were not nearly as round as this case."
Due to this being a clear attempted murder case, Weaver received 10 to 15 years of prison time, and having to be registered as a sex offender. If you think it can't get worse than this, then you haven't heard about Mark Lotinski, who is definitely the real-life Hannibal Lecter and just as horrific. These dead eyes standing in court are about to admit to all the details of a crime, because the crime is unfathomable. It started in Michigan, when a Carl Bacon filed a missing persons report for his son, Kevin. The police report would lead to the house of Kevin's last grinder date, Mark Lotinski. If only Kevin hadn't showed up that night, because he was found hanging by his ankles from the rafters in a secret room in Mark's basement, with a stab wound in his back, a sliced throat, and missing testicles, which Mark had brutally removed, taken to the kitchen, and, unfathomably, eaten. Not only is this cannibalism, it's the worst level of cannibalism someone could ever imagine, straight out of a serial killer flick. Strangely, even though Lotinski had the demeanor of a horrible serial killer, in court he admitted to everything.
On that date, were you with Kevin Bacon?
Yes, I was.
He kept being asked questions about what he'd done, and he answered them all with extreme honesty.
After Mr. Bacon was dead, did you remove part of his body, specifically his testicles?
Yes, I did.
Did you move those testicles to the kitchen?
Yes, I did.
While the victim's family would love for Lotinski to suffer, saying, "In your sick, twisted mind, you probably didn't think you did anything wrong. This Christmas, I hope you suffer like we have." Unfortunately for everyone who sympathizes with this family, Lotinski entered a plea deal and got life in prison without parole instead of something like the death penalty.
Mr. Lotinski, the court agrees with the attorneys. The court does find you guilty of open murder and dismembering a body.
A real-life serial killer like this is terrifying, but nobody expects to see something as horrible as a zombie-like attack. But then there was Austin Haroof, who was caught literally eating the face of a dead body. In Florida, Austin Haroof was caught storming out of a family dinner in a restaurant after claiming he was some superhero with immortal powers. Austin must have had the twisted idea of what superheroes actually did, however, because all of a sudden, he attacked two innocent people, John Stevens and his partner Michelle. In the middle of the very public attack, Stevens' neighbor Jeff Fisher took notice and immediately jumped to stop Haroof, but Haroof ended up stabbing him.
He turned and looked at me and said, "You want no part of this, you want no part of me, one of the two." And then from his right hand swung.
I've been stabbed in the back. I'm bleeding pretty bad.
With all these horrific actions, Haroof must have thought he was a supervillain instead. If only it ended there, however, because Haroof just had to make things worse. Much worse. After John Stevens and Michelle died from their injuries, the police were too late to stop Austin from one more act of terror that no one could have imagined, chewing on the face of one of the victims. When police arrived, it took a team of 4 officers and a canine to literally pry Austin off the victims. Austin was clearly extremely mentally ill because something this horrifying only exists in zombie movies. After going into a coma, Austin found himself in court for 2 murders and an attempted murder for 6 full years of court proceedings. You'd think after 6 years something major would happen, but it was much, much worse for the victims' families, who raised tensions in court when they mourned their sister Michelle and saw Haroof as a cold-blooded killer.
Is it really so hard for you to understand that you were just a cold-blooded murderer? You're disgusting.
After all of this, though, the court proceedings became extremely derisive and stirred up major controversy when Haroof's insanity plea was accepted. Austin is clearly suffering from major mental health problems, but for the victims' families, not going to jail was a big no-no.
I didn't really know you could brutally murder two people, attempt to murder another, and not even have a trial. That was news to me.
However, justice has to serve both sides, and Haroof was sentenced to unspecified time in psychiatric hospital.